Just your thoughts on the other semi-final then, Limerick Galway, and we know that Hannon is supposed to be out of this game. They put out a press release a few weeks ago. Sean Finn is out of this game, so they've already sort of had to rejig a little bit to cover off for Finn, and Mike Casey's in there, obviously a very good player. But now Hannon, with him gone, do you put like a holding six there, like for example Dan Morrissey, or more of a attacking one like Nash or Kyle Hayes, or Keane Lynch could be he played their minor or whatever. He's so classy. Like, what would you do here if you were John Kiley?
Yeah, it's hard to know. Hard to know what to do, really, to be honest. I don't think Keane Lynch is fully fit, and I'd say that's probably why he's not playing. I think they'll go with Dan Morrissey in there, to be fair. Maybe Kyle Hayes to the wing. It's hard to know what's left in Limerick, because they're just getting over the line in games. They're not kind of trashing teams the way they did a couple of years ago, but they still seem to have that hunger to get over the line. In saying that, they're still getting over the line. Nobody can beat them, and they are the team to beat. I really don't know if Galway have it in them to beat them. Galway seem to be just possibly getting there at this stage. Don't seem to be shooting the lights out, but seem to be, thereabouts in all games. And I'd say it'll be the same. I'd have the questions for Galway as I would for Clare. Can they do it in a knockout game? Can they get over it in a tight game? Obviously, they got caught in the Leinster final with a sucker punch, but I think they'll be thereabouts. And I just question, can they get over the line in a tight game? Whereas Limerick can. Limerick can.
Would you have found it odd watching Henry on the sideline for Galway, and especially down in Nolan Park this year? A couple of times he was roaring in about Kilkenny lads diving. So I thought I'd say that must have been a funny one for the Kilkenny locals to watch.
Probably was, but look, I think in these days you have managers from all different counties going to other counties. So I think there was a lot made of Henry obviously going up to Galway, but look, it's like after the first game, it just becomes normal. I think and manager obviously is going to back his own team and try and get the best out of them, and obviously he's going to try and influence the referee as well. So Henry is no different in that to any other manager.
It's good to know that a Kilkenny man thinks that Kilkenny dive.
No, I didn't say that. I never agreed.
No, I meant Henry.
Oh, Henry. Well, look. He probably does, but sure, look, isn't everyone at it at the moment?
Yeah, it's true.
Trying to buy frees and all that kind of stuff, and just on the refereeing thing as well. I hope the referees on Sunday and Saturday evening actually let the game go, and it's not a free taking competition, because I know there is directives from Crow Park now for different tackles that have to be blown up and that kind of stuff. But look, we all want to see two very good games with limited stoppages, I suppose.
We're talking about fouls and lads maybe buying frees. To be fair now, you were one of the first to drop the head.
Don't go down there now. Don't go down that road.
Am I not right in saying you were one of the first to drop the head?
Maybe, but that was just the way I used to be going forward at players.
I think you showed Keane Kenny how to do it as well.
You can't tackle in around the neck. You should know that.
That's true, yeah, that's true. You can't, all right. It's not much you can do if it goes down like this, but
everyone is doing it now.
And I think, do you know what? And it's funny, a lot of the referees aren't blowing them now. They're just like, hands up in the air. You're looking for it too much. If it's a genuine free, they'll blow it. And if you're not kind of looking for it, they'll blow it. But if it looks like you're looking for it and you kind of nearly stop, I think they're just, it's obvious, it's not in the rule book or anything like that, but I think it's maybe a directive that the referees are just saying, listen, lads are trying to buy frees here, just let play on, and maybe lads will stop doing it or whatever if we don't blow.
This is it. I think lads do it and then they just stop expecting the whistle to be blown, and more often than not then the referees just play on kind of thing. Whereas if you do it and you kind of keep going as if you want to, you weren't trying to buy a free, advantage then and on you go,
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, there's a question in from Hugh Paddy there. He just said there's talk of Gerard Hegarty potentially playing 6 for Limerick, and would this be totally off the wall? Like, in one sense it wouldn't be that off the wall because he played wing back under Kiley in an under 21 All Ireland. He won a Fitzgibbon wing back, but I just think I don't think Kiley and Kinnerk kind of operate like that. Like, I was at the Munster League game earlier on this year where they played Cork. Dan Morrissey was centre back. Hannon was out for the league final. Dan Morrissey played centre back. Like, I don't think they'll make a load of switches to put one lad in. I think they'll go with what makes more sense, and it's a tried and trusted. People that say Darrow Donovan maybe would drop back 6. He plays there for Doon. There was talk of David Reedy playing a bit there as well in recent weeks, but I kind of think it's a bit of a no-brainer. I just don't think they'll go that far outside the box. They'll stick with what they know they're going to get.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think Garrod Hegarty, I think he's too effective on the half-hour line to take him out of there, and I think, as you said, Kiley and Kinnerk, they don't do that kind of thing. You know, I think they'll just slot in Dan Morrissey or even maybe Kyle Hayes in there, and away they'll go again. You know, the team hasn't changed. The Limerick team hasn't changed over the last 3 or 4 years, bar maybe one corner forward, maybe, and maybe Kyle Hayes used to start 6 or 11, and now he's gone back to wing back. But other than that, barring injuries, it hasn't really changed. You know.
Adrian McGrath says that 100% won't be Morrissey playing at centre back. Can't understand these debates, not mentioning Diarmuid Burns, who's one of the few Limerick backs who wants to sit in and strike the ball like Hannon does. Seems obvious to me. I mean, that could happen. The only reservations I'd have about starting Dan Morrissey there is you're then taking 2 pieces of your full back line out, and it's an awful lot of rejigging. Michael, who was it we were talking to recently that was saying, if you take Finn out of the full back line, it kind of takes away some of that sort of safety blanket for the other lads who are in the full back line. And if Hannon isn't there, maybe that takes away a bit of the safety blanket for Burns and Hayes. I don't know whether they need it, but like, you get confidence from the leaders in your line.
Oh, totally, yeah. Plus, Sean Finn is their best man marker in the full back line. They don't really have an obvious replacement for him. They don't have, like, Dan Morrissey could slip in 6, but with due respect to him, he will not play the role the same as Declan Hannon. He can't knit the play as efficiently as Hannon can. He probably can't surge forward and score from 100 yards like Declan Hannon can. And just something I put to you on, like, is there any sense of deja vu here that this looks a bit like 2010 with yourselves, where there was a couple of injuries and there's just...
Jeez, don't mind the injuries.
No, but just even... Like, I was chatting to Martin Fogarty the other day, and he said whatever about Henry and John Tennyson. He said missing Brian Hogan was the biggest of them all. He said he broke his finger, I think, or re-injured his finger in the build-up to the final. But then all of a sudden, you have Henry playing on one leg, you have Tennyson playing on one leg, you have no Brian Hogan. All you're going deeper into your squad. Your options coming off the bench aren't as good. Is there any sense of history repeating itself here?
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, you know, I think Sean Finn, first and foremost, he's a massive, massive loss. But I think Declan Hannon is going to be a serious loss. Just on Declan Hannon, who actually came in for Declan Hannon when he went off the last couple of days?
Colin Coughlin came in wing back, I think, and Kyle Hayes went to centre back the last day. Yeah.
So maybe that's what they'll do. You know, Kyle Hayes will probably go centre back.
Or did he? Actually, I'm not 100% certain.
Yeah.
Dan Morrissey
Colin
went
Coughlin
out. Yeah, and Richie English came in as well. So yeah.
So like, they have a couple of options there. You know, to throw Mike Casey in full back, bring Dan Morrissey out, and start Richie English, or does Colin Coughlin come in and Kyle Hayes goes centre back. But like you say, like, you can have injuries and you can fill him in, but your centre back and your talisman and your captain and the lad that links up all the play, when he's gone, you know, do you have a ready replacement there? The answer is no, you don't. For the likes of Declan Hannon, and we didn't have for obviously Brian Hogan at the time, and that can sap the confidence out as well. I remember talking to, like, I think we were only 2 points down or 3 points down maybe against Tipperary in 2010, and I remember talking to Kalasicki after the game, and he said, I knew we were better at half time, and I says, why? Everyone's head was down, you know, confidence was at an all-time low going into the dressing room, and he said he knew, even though we were in the game, he knew we were bet. And you know, that could have a serious effect. I know Declan Hannon started the last couple of games, but went off. Not the same thing, I don't think. When you're leading into it and you know Declan Hannon is not going to be playing, it might just seep that little bit of confidence out. And if Galway can gather that momentum that they got the last day against Tipperary, you know, it could just be the swing that they need, you know.
The last time Hannon wasn't on the pitch as well, Kilkenny beat them in 2019 when he went off at half time. But I don't think that's a coincidence either.
Yeah, he has been, he has been the standout player. I don't think there's a game you could say Declan Hannon had a poor game over the last 3 or 4 games or 3 or 4 years. He's always come up with a couple of points and dictated the play from centre back. So he's going to be a huge loss.
So there's plenty more still to talk about in terms of some of the matchups in these games here. And like we were chatting beforehand about what might happen between Limerick and Galway, who'll pick up who. So Conor Whelan, and I mean, a lot of this comes down to what way do Limerick address the centre-back situation. Like Dan Morrissey, well, Mike Casey is probably the most likely to pick up Whelan. You'd imagine Sean Finn would have done it, but obviously, look, he's not there. Richie English, who knows, he may come into the team if Dan Morrissey goes out to centre-back. Would Dan Morrissey even pick him up? And then hopefully, if, like from a Limerick point of view, they keep their shape and it's more 50-50 high ball going in between them rather than ball into the corner or what Cathal Barrett was up against the last day in 50 yards of space, +1 a bit away from them. So what way do you think that Galway will look to exploit Limerick?
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see where Henry puts Whelan, to think like, you'd have to say probably having him out around centre forward on a guy who, has Dan Morrissey ever started a championship game centre back for Limerick? Probably not. It is going to be a new experience. I know he's played there a bit. And then it's also the one, like, is he going to, he's not going to follow him either. So I think I'd probably have him out around there. I'd probably have him in around the edge of the square too, though. Particularly if Mike Casey goes full back, that means probably Richie English is going to come in. When was the last championship game that Richie English started for Limerick? I can't think of it off the top of my head. So I'd imagine that if he does play, that they'd potentially go after him as well. The worrying thing from a Limerick point of view is, if English does start, if Dan Morrissey goes to 6, just say someone picks up a knock, then you're going really deep into your reserves. Then you're going into Aaron Costello, Colin Coughlin. They probably don't have, it's in the full back line where they don't have a lot of maybe versatility as regards numbers wise, and it is still a specialist spot. But I would expect Whelan to be out around half forward. They won't want him they won't want the ability for him to be tied down. I'll put it to you that way. They will want him out there in space. And then I would, particularly if he's going well, you could easily put him into the edge of the square at different times as well if he's getting on lots of ball. But it's key for Galway that they get Whelan on the ball. Even if there's a couple of early wides or something like that, he has to be on the ball. Galway will not win this game unless Conor Whelan scores 4 points plus, 3 points plus anyway. I'd say he has to be in the game. And I think most of their forward plan will be built around getting him on the ball, getting him as influential as he's been in the last 2 games. Yeah,
Detox 101 says, Vernie, whenever the last training game was 15 on 15, that's when, I presume he's talking about Richie English. Yeah. Vinny O'Brien says, a mentally fresh Limerick side will destroy an overrated Galway side. Peg Leg Lonergan says, destroy no, win yes.
I think that is fascinating. The 4 weeks, they've negotiated the 4 weeks really well. I think it was 2019 maybe when Kilkenny, I don't even think Kilkenny stunned them for the whole game. They stunned them in the first 15 minutes in 2019. I think they were 1-6 to a point up and they just couldn't, they were chipping and they just couldn't get there. And probably should have had 65 to draw the game. There's no point in saying any different. But they've negotiated that gap really, really well. And any staleness that might have been there. Imagine the euphoria of winning the Munster and then getting probably a week off and then coming again and knowing we're through the front door here. We have the easiest passage. We just need to get ourselves mentally and physically fresh again. So I do expect Limerick to be very, very fresh. They're not, people will talk, you chat to anybody in Galway who was involved in 2018 and they ended up going to a Leinster final replay and they ended up going to an All-Ireland semi-final replay. And by the time they fell into the All-Ireland final, they were goosed nearly. And it was 15 minutes at the end of the All-Ireland that nearly won it back for them. But Limerick don't have that. They have the injuries, all right. But there should be a freshness coming into this game. There should be a bounce coming into this game. And I would be expecting them to be up another, as John Kiley would say, I would be expecting incremental improvement. I would expect another 5 or 10% from Limerick.
So the one player that I'm wondering, when are we going to get a huge performance from him this year, is Brian Kincannon. And of course, he got that goal last year in the All-Ireland semi-final that re-energised Galway's chances against Limerick. He has to have a big game. It'll be very interesting to see if Keenan Fahy remains at centre forward. I think he certainly will. But will Conor Cooney also get a place back into the starting team? Because they probably need him scoring as well. And, you know, last year it didn't really work out for him against Limerick either. But they need a day where Conor Whelan, Brian Concannon, maybe even Evan Nyland snipes 3 or 4 from play, especially if Limerick go with more of an attack-minded 6, that it should present more opportunities for him rather than somebody who's overly worried about trying to tie him down. So, like, and actually, if you go back to that 2019 game that you talked about when Kilkenny beat Limerick, one of the big things is obviously the ferocity with which Kilkenny hit them at the start. And to me, it seemed like Limerick were scrambled for the entire game. They were making errors that they don't normally make. Like, any time that Limerick have been rattled, it's been because a team has sewed it into them for the first 15 minutes. And I know people talk about, was it Waterford in 2021, that they went so hard for the first 20 minutes that they just hit a wall or whatever. And whatever about that being entirely true or not, Tipperary in 2021, the Munster final, you could say again they hit a wall. But in terms of trying to rattle their cages, you do need to rattle their cage early, trying to get ahead and maybe just stick with them for the rest of the game.
When was the last time you saw an underdog winning a game against a heavy favourite and them not starting well? They just can't be 4 or 5 down. They're going to have to start. They're going to have to start as they mean to go on. Realistically, you're saying about Conor Cooney there. I definitely wouldn't be starting Conor Cooney with the news that Jason Flynn is out. Like Flynn is out with a hamstring injury by all accounts. They're gonna need 15 lads to go to war for an hour, and they're going to need 5 to come in to make an impact. And in fairness, Conor Cooney got in a couple of balls when he came in the last day. Wouldn't be that surprised if Brian Concannon is kept in reserve as well. Like, if he has a huge 25 minutes, if he's a massive 25 minutes when he comes in, that could be enough. But they're going to need that hop. Eddie Brennan was only saying there last week that Galway got everything right against Limerick in last year's All-Ireland semi-final. Basically, they kept Hegarty quiet. They kept a lot of the big names quiet. And then it's like they didn't know what to do when David Reedy came in. It's like maybe we didn't plan for him. Maybe we planned to keep Hegarty quiet, and Reedy comes in and wins the game. That's what Galway are going to need. They're going to need those 2 or 3 lads coming in that can turn a game. Can they afford to come on it in reserve? I'm not sure. They're going to have to. It's going to have to be a bit of a balancing act, but they're going to need at least 3 lads that can come in and contribute probably on the scoreboard.
But they're going to need to make sure that Tom Monaghan, who will always score 2 or 3 points, isn't taking pot shots from the wrong place. And if you go back to last year's semi-final, when David Reedy, as you rightly said, he came on and he made the difference. But Evan Nyland had a handy one for him around midfield, on his own, on his good side, put it wide. I can't remember who exactly it was, but some other player was soloing down the right wing and they had a shot that went wide as well. It was a low percentage shot. So you have to keep that composure towards the end of the game and give... And look, it's very easy saying it here that you need to give the extra pass and be cool and all that. But like, if you're 70 minutes into a game and you've been chased by this horde of green machines for, you know, that period of time, it's very hard to keep your composure. But to get across the line against a team that's used to winning tight games when it comes down to the very bitter end, that's probably what you're just going to need to have.
Yeah, a lot of time, I was only chatting Brendan Cummins yesterday or the day before about this, because I was just doing something about potentially the end of a dynasty coming. You know, if Limerick are beaten at the weekend, and obviously Tipperary ended to 5 in a row in 2010, and he was just saying, like, yeah, it's the second or third time I've said it, to be fair, in this show, but he's just saying, you're not actually physically, you know, you're physically tired, all right, at the end of a game, but you start mentally, your mental fatigue plays into a bit of physical fatigue. You start taking maybe lazy shots or taking the wrong option from 80 or 90 yards. It's the one word he just kept coming back to was precision. You just need to have that precision. And even the lads coming on, they need to have that precision, because Limerick will, and he broke it down into very exact science. He just said, Limerick will keep putting the ball over the bar where at the end, and, you know, to still have that precision in the 77th minute, whereas other teams, you know, whether it's a bit of white line fever or it's a bit of, oh my God, we can win this game. And you know when you start thinking too much about it, you know, when you're on autopilot and you're in, you know, to say about being in the zone, you're actually not thinking about whatever. You play snooker as I do. You know, you're on a break and you're just playing 5 or 6 shots. You know, the odd time I made a 50 something one time, and I never thought once about any one shot I was playing. And someone, your man, Andrew Sullivan, he said to me, "Oh, you're on 50, whatever. What happened? Missed the next shot. Talk too much about it." It's like the Galway lads on Saturday evening need to be like, it just needs to be relentless. There needs to be no thought put into it almost. It needs to be autopilot, just going and going and going and going, and not thinking about, oh, we can slay the beast here. You know what I mean? The time to think about that is when it's done. And that's a very difficult thing to do because Limerick are kind of playing rent-free inside people's heads in the last 10 minutes of games because you know they're coming. You know they're coming. And it's almost like they will come, but that also takes like a 10% off you because you're like fearing and you're expecting them to come. Whereas teams just need to, I suppose, concentrate on themselves and just make sure that they see it out to the finish as best possible. But it's an awful lot easier said than done, unfortunately.
Yeah, I can't help but think when you're talking about the snooker thing and the composure that, like, sometimes you'd be on a little bit of a break. And obviously, look, we're not talking about massive breaks here at the level we're playing at. But you can sort of see, okay, I've got a grand handy shot here. And I can see the balls are lining up nicely. The red pack is split for me. If I in any way keep it together here, there's points to be had. And then, yeah, that's when you just miss the handy one. Or
we call it the snare.
Yeah.
Because if you don't make that one shot, everything else is irrelevant.
It says, Detox says, lads, what's happening about the snooker game? And we in the year of Tip v Offaly. Bernie here, it's your chance to get back. We still have to do that.
Yeah, no, we'll definitely do it in the winter time. We'll raise a few quid for a charity as well.
Sully 180 says, I'd like to clarify. Vernie asked me what he was on. I didn't say it as gamesmanship.
Yeah, he's probably right. And that was the first time in the break that I got in my own head. And that can happen easily. Cummins said as well, and he said it's something that you can't prepare for. He said in 2009, I was looking at the lads coming around in the high-vis jackets. And I was thinking, oh my God, like we could win this game. That's what he actually said. He thought that. And it's just like Galway were in a similar position the other day. You nearly have to be oblivious to everything that's going on and just totally, as I said, maybe it's a bit cliched or whatever, but to be in the zone. Nothing else matters, only the next ball, the next score. You've been in games as well where you're looking at the time or you're looking at the score and you're wishing the finishing line. And when you wish for the finishing line, you are in big trouble.
Yeah, I heard about when Tipperary 2010 were having their pre-match talk or a chat at some point ahead of the All-Ireland final that maybe it was Paul Kern was like saying, lads, you know, with 5 minutes to go against Kilkenny or maybe before the red card, I was looking up and thinking, right, we have a right good chance to win this. But you can't be thinking that at all. Yeah. And that you need to just, you know, keep going no matter what. By the way,
that's why Owen Kelly was going around doing this. One of the most annoying things of all time. And every time the match is played is this. And you have Liam Sheedy doing that finger kind of wag at the end as well. But that's kind of what Kelly was doing. It was like, we've scored a goal, but it doesn't matter. Next ball, let's hammer the hammer while we can.
Do you know you can get that thing as a gift on WhatsApp? I'll send it on to you there.
Thanks. I'm glad that will really brighten up my day.
So just so people know if they're not already aware, Galway versus Limerick, that'll be refereed by James Owens this weekend. And the other game between Clare and Kilkenny will be refereed by Colm Lyons. So we'll see how that impacts the two games. Obviously, lots of people have their opinions on the different referees. And like, you do have to know how to play the referee.
You do. I'm hoping the door is open for John Keenan to get the All-Ireland and sail away into the sunset now. I believe Paul O'Dwyer is retiring as well, and he'll be in the mix. Retiring or being forced to retire because of an ageist GA rule where you can't referee inter-county level beyond the age of 50, which is absolutely bonkers. Like, even if you look at the retirement age for like work has gone up to is it 68 now or something like that now? Like, I can't believe this is still a thing in the GA.
If you're fit enough, why not?
Nah, like it's like Tony Brown said, hurling inter-county till you're 41. There are outliers to every rule. I think it's absolutely bonkers. In an era where we are struggling for top level referees, we're going to let some of the best exit. I think that's a rule or something that needs to go to Congress. I think it's mad.
Yeah, just a couple of other matchups that we could be looking at here. Who'll pick up Aaron Gallan? And like I was thinking initially, maybe Darren Morrissey, because he's relatively quick across the floor. He's decent in the air, even though he's not overly huge sort of a guy. Because I don't think they'll bring Dahi Burke out of 6 back to mark him. Last year, they started with Cathal Mannion kind of as a sweeper. And because Limerick had that extra +1 further back the field, they were able to move it up through the lines and bypass Cathal Mannion. So I don't think Galway will go with a +1. I think lesson learned on that.
You don't think Cathal Mannion will play a similar type role that he did against Tip?
Not quite to that same level, because I don't think sweepers work against Limerick because they're too clever on the ball.
They definitely will not make a hero of him anyway. So I think you could be right. He might be there at stages now.
Well, I think that there'll always be I agree. He'll always have an eye on the back door. But I think they're not going to bring Daithí Burke back there. Maybe they will. Gerard McInerney, I'm not sure he's the right matchup. If there's obviously 50-50 high ball going in, fine. But I think if ball is popped in front of Aaron Gillane with the feet he has, I think most people are going to be in trouble, especially if you're 6'4". I mean, that's no criticism of Gerard McInerney, but he's probably 16 stone or more, maybe 17 stone. And Gillane,
he's not that big, is he?
Well, he's 6'4". He's not, and I'm saying it's all monstrous muscle here.
I'd say he's no more than 15 stone. Genuinely, now he's lean now.
I'd be absolutely look. Anyway, we won't argue the toss over that.
I'll text Jerry McInerney when we get off the call. And,
yeah, what's the there? Trying to settle a bet there. But I think Pádraig Mannion could end up back full back on him. The reason being, if you look at the last game against Dublin in the round robin, he was put back full back on Donald Burke. If you looked into the Leinster final, he was put in the full back line against Owen Cody. Now, I know he didn't play there against Tipperary, but there are some players that you absolutely just have to nail down. So I think it could be Pádraig Mannion. And you know what? It's probably as good a matchup as they have. But of course, that means maybe you'll have a smaller man going out on Tom Morrissey. So there's, it's tough for Henry Shefflin here to really balance this out.
Yeah, I think you're taking away such an important weapon at wing back. The deliveries Mannion gives inside, how cool he is on the ball, the ability to score from distance.
Hey,
I always think,
what if you threw Gerard McInerney out in the half back line? And I don't know, does he have quite the same level of legs anymore because he's a lot of miles on the clock. But on puck outs anyway, he's going to be able to compete with Hegarty, who I know you're looking at Fintan Burke, but potentially there's a matchup that would make some level of sense.
I think you need strikers in your half back line. I think you need a Dermot Burns that can open the shoulders and give a 100-yard ball in. I'm not sure if McInerney is that. It's a difficult one because McInerney came off against Tipperary and was under a bit of pressure and was probably at fault for the goal. So that would be why I'd be leaning towards, if he was on top of his game, would they put him on Gillane? Maybe, but probably not now. As well as that, if he's not on top of his game, would you move him out wing back? I'm not so sure. But you mentioned Darren Morrissey off air. I can't remember if you said it on air. But that's probably someone who's in, player who's in good form, good in the air, nullified TJ. I remember when he marked him a couple of years ago, or did well on him in the air anyway. And maybe Galway look at trying something different. They have plenty of options if Gillane is causing them trouble, and I don't think they'll be waiting 50 minutes to make a change. If Gillane is going to town, they could potentially move Grealish on him. They could potentially move Daithí Burke back on him. They could potentially put Pádraig Mannion on him. They have plenty of options. It's going to be interesting to see which one they go at. I don't think they'll go at Mannion from the off, though, because I just think it robs them of a really important weapon. Particularly when you're playing Limerick, you need to have lads that can play with precision from the back. And he's probably one of their most precise defenders. Like he'll tread passes. No, absolutely no problem. If you're
Robin Peter to pay Pádraig.
Oh, I like it. So that would be my one kind of worry in that regard. From a Limerick point of view, then, like, does Graham Mulcahy start again, as he did in the Munster final? Does David Reedy start again? If Peter Casey's fit, to me, he starts every day of the week. But if and I'm not sure why he didn't start the Munster final. He obviously made a good impact when he came in, and he was one of the ones that was back getting in big tackles and whatever. But maybe they feel like with Finn missing and with Hannah missing, that they really need a kick off the bench and they need a really experienced player to come in. They're juggling around, they're moving pieces for a 75-minute game, not for a 60-minute game, if you get me. And one thing is for sure, Limerick will leave a kick, and they will leave a couple of players that can give them a big kick off the bench.
PWell74 says, if Cian Lynch is playing and going well, then all Galway's plans will be up in the air. But, I mean, that's yet another, at this stage, an unknown. We don't know if he's going well. We all know when he's on form and fit, he's probably the best player in the country. There's a couple of other lads you could put in there. So, obviously, we're all absolutely in agreement on that.